trying to get this thing fixed so it'll stay in place. Okay, disculpe. Sorry, you guys. For today's live, I'm kind of sick. I got a cold over the weekend. Happens every time I come back to the States from El Salvador. Something about being in the States always gets me sick. I don't know if it's the processed food. I don't know if it's just, it's cooler so the germs fly more. But I'm going to do my best to get through this live. Excuse me. Because really awesome things are happening in El Salvador. Okay. And this is really pertinent right now with in the US, you know, we have all these, the port strikes and people running out of toilet paper in Maryland and people being worried about food being delivered and things such as that. Well, food sovereignty and also, which if you don't know, sovereignty means like independence. And El Salvador has been, ever since President Bukele came in, he's been on a big sovereignty kick. And it's about sovereignty in all things, like sovereignty financially. That's why he jumped onto Bitcoin, because that is financial sovereignty. You know, nobody can take your Bitcoin or give it back and tax it and anything like that. So that was kind of the first step to freedom, is making sure nobody was messing around with your interest and things like that by printing out more money and things. So that's for another live though. One of the other things he was talking about in freedom is then he secured the country and he put all the people that were making the country scary and hi there, Wolf. He took the guys that were terrorizing the people and he put them where they belonged. And so now there is freedom and sovereignty to go places, to be out in the public. And so the next step he's doing with, he announced this next second half, his second term, his focus is the economy. And the very first thing he started with is, okay, once the people are safe, you gotta make sure they have food and that they can feed their families. So, and one of his first steps in his second term was he announced the concept of Agro Marcados, or farmers markets. And if you can see, hi there, Apex. So as you can see, if you go back to his first speech after President Bukele came for his second term, he talks about why he came to this decision about trying to balance the increase in macroeconomics and microeconomics, because even while you're bringing in more technology, more industry to provide higher paying jobs for your people, at the same time, you gotta make sure that people can eat and take care of themselves. And the more dependent you are on others, the less control and freedom you truly have of your own life. So, the freedom, physical freedom to go outside and security was number one. Financial freedom to have your money and do what you will with your money was number two. And now he's talking about food freedom. And so with that, he said, we need to become more independent. He's like, I know we are the size of Delaware. Okay, I don't think people understand, especially gringos and us, you know, people from more north. We think, oh, it's a country. And if you've never gone out of the US, you think that's a big thing. But most countries are very small compared to the US. I remember the first time I went to Europe, it was in 1995. I was stunned because I always heard about, you know, Britain and France, and I thought they were these, you know, big places and big, you know, big powers and places comparable to the US. And I went there and I'm like, wait a minute. They're like, wait a minute. I'm in France and Germany's just an hour that way. Italy's just like 4 hours that way. Spain's about 5 hours that way. And that's it for France. And I was shocked. I'm like, that's it? I'm like, this is like, I drive from Florida to California like every other year with my family. And that's, I mean, like Europe, I mean, most of the European nations are smaller than most of our states. And so people don't understand, El Salvador is literally, it's like the size of Delaware. And Delaware is a state that unless you're, creating some C Corp or unless you're creating a new corporation, nobody thinks twice about Delaware because it's the tiniest state in the U.S. That is the size of El Salvador. But even though, and that's why we call ourselves the pulgarcito, or the little flea, the little flea of the Americas. Even though we're super tiny, we can't really be super self-sufficient because we don't have all the resources that, say, the U.S. has. So, but even while that being the case, he said, we need to get more independent, and we need to get more sovereign when it comes to feeding our own people. I think it's mainly, and I think this stemmed from a couple months back. I'm not exactly how sure, but there were a bunch of blockades. We get most of our fruits and vegetables from Guatemala and Mexico. Okay, and Guatemala they're having a big government issues, and the people were getting mad, and they wanted certain people in the government kicked out, and so they had these blockades at the border, and so there were trucks of produce rotting at the border that they were not letting come through to El Salvador. And of course, our prices went they went up through the roof, and that created, big issues for the people. And so as President Bukele, I'm sure, prayed about it and thought about it, he said, you know what, it's right. We need to get more independent and not so dependent upon others. And so then he started into this concept. He's like, you know what, in the U.S., they have these things called farmers market where people bring their local produce that they produce at home to sell. And he's like, and usually the produce, since it's made right there, it's not from a big, massive farm. It's not mass produced, it's not big food. So usually the produce is more organic. It's healthier. It's, local. It has a smaller shelf life because usually the food that has to be transported from long distances, they need to have a big shelf life, or else, it's going to be rotten by the time it gets to the store. And yeah, or if it's just ripe when it gets there, by the time you get home, it doesn't last more than 2 days in your fridge. So he said, you know what, he's like, in order for us to get more food sovereign, let's start these Agro Marcados where that kind of cuts out the middleman, where people can bring their local produced products that are produced here in El Salvador, and that will sell directly to people in that community. And so he started a few agromercados in like Santa Ana, San Salvador, and Paul, United States is in the name. Yeah, I know. I know. But states in El Salvador versus states in the U.S., it's a whole different ballpark. Because you know what you know, and you know what you've experienced. All the states in other countries are as big as your states, and they're not. Some of them are like smaller than counties, especially in California. So, hola Marta, hi there. Horchata, America. I hear ya. Okay, hi there KMC. I love my locals farmers. I hate how pricey avocados are today though. Yeah, horchata, yeah, I hear you. Avocados are really expensive, but I mean, and some of that's seasonal, but that's one of the things I love about living in El Salvador is that you can eat seasonally. Unlike in the States, you have your big growing season in the summer, and then you have to can or dry and store up to last like the winter months. And then boom, you plant again in the spring. And there's a few like winter crops and stuff. But what I love about El Salvador is like it's either mango season or it's peach season or it's, corn and then bean season. Because another really cool thing is and let me do a little update. Hi, I'm Jenny Ari, La Gringa Salvadoreña, and I have lived in El Salvador for over 3 years. And I conduct relocation tours for people that are thinking about moving to the new land of the free. in El Salvador. And when I first moved down there, I lived on a farm, a beautiful little farm. It was about, let me see, what we had planted and stuff. It was probably half a manzana. And a manzana is how they do like acreage down there. And a manzana, I think, is like 2.2 acres. You guys can correct me, put it in the comments if I calculated that wrong. But so I guess it's about 1 acre was the farm that I was on when I first moved down there. It was gorgeous. I loved it. It had this beautiful little Spanish villa, and that I made into an Airbnb. And we hosted, and that's when I started my business with my husband, hosting people that were thinking about moving down to El Salvador and wanted to see what it was like to live there. Because visiting there as a tourist is a whole different ballpark than living in El Salvador. Just like you, if somebody comes to your city and visits you, what do you take them to? You take them to, the big skyscraper, or you take them to the big bridge, or you take them to, the kind of flashy touristy places, maybe the best restaurant in town. But if that person wasn't visiting you, how many times would you go there? No. So touristy places are not the same as living there. So after hosting people and helping dozens of people move to El Salvador, I moved on to creating these relocation tours. Again, it's not a tourism tour. We're not going to hike a volcano. We're not going to go surfing. You're going to get a deep immersion into what it is like to live in El Salvador on a daily, day-to-day basis. Because there's a lot of hype on the internet, and you got to be really careful when you're basing decisions and opinions off the internet. Please never base a decision off of the internet because there's so many different opinions. So what I did is I created these relocation tours. So people that are like, I hear all this stuff, I visited and it's really cool, and I think I might want to, but I don't know because it's really expensive and a really big change to move to a different country. So I created these tours so you can come and we do a deep dive immersion into what it is like to live in El Salvador. And the tour is all inclusive. I take care of everything. I take care of the driving. I take care of all the meals. I take care of your hotels. I take care of all the activities that we do, all the real estate that we see. So you only have to focus on seeing yourself in El Salvador and what your life might look like. And most of the people that come down, they start off with like maybe a 20 to 30%. I think I want to try El Salvador. I've been looking at Mexico. Maybe I've been looking at Costa Rica, but I think I want to try El Salvador. They come down with that, and by the end of my 1 week immersion, they are 90% sure. Yep, El Salvador's for me, or no. There's not enough English, or for whatever reason, they're like, no, I think I'm going to go try Costa Rica or somewhere else. And that's great, because, El Salvador is not for everybody, and everybody's not for El Salvador either. So what matters is that you have that surety of yes or no. So you can stop wasting time watching more videos on YouTube, wondering, questioning, hemming, hawing, and you can make your decision, be sure of your decision, and move on. And so those are my relocation tours. Go to livinglikealocal.com and you'll see a list of the tours I have. I have tours for families. I have tours for childless people, like retirees, digital nomads. And my next tour is all about this, food sovereignty. Okay, so this tour is October 14th. So you better hurry up and get your ticket if you won't come, because we're going to go around, and these Agro Marcados are just the perfect, they're the first step of getting people to produce more locally and be able to sell more locally, because that's the step one. And then the great part is this is an opportunity. It's a massive opportunity for Salvadoreños to plant. Oh my goodness, El Salvador, everything grows here. It's crazy. I mean, on my farm, I noticed the other day, I was walking with my wash, because you have to go out of the villa and you go down to kind of like the basement to put the clothes in the washer and the dryer. And while I was walking through there, I looked down and I saw a big old line of baby tomatoes growing right beside my little walkway. And I looked down there because I guess somebody had gone through and was eating some tomatoes, and like some of the seeds like fell down on the ground, or some of the tomatoes maybe fell down there on the ground, and boom, next growing season, here's this big old long line. Whereas I remember in the States, when I was trying to grow a garden, oh my goodness, the drama of making sure it sprouts and then making sure it has, support so it can grow, and maximize the area and things like that. And then it was making sure I have the right fertilizer and then keeping the bugs from eating my stuff. Oh my goodness, it was so much work. But in El Salvador, at the farm, we don't use any fertilizer. We don't we don't use any pesticides. We don't, because everything just grows so easily. It's amazing. And so that's great, because it gives even the poor Salvadoreño that's eating, a mango seed or eating some tomatoes, you can take a few seeds, plant them, and, produce. Because that's the great thing about sovereignty is, with freedom and with this, independence, you gotta work, you gotta create. You can't be dependent upon other people to do for you what you can do for yourself. And so that's why this is a great opportunity for Salvadoreños to plant anything and grow anything, and then bring what they produce into the Agro Mercado, and so it can be sold. And consequently, everybody's health will get better, because we'll be eating better food. And El Salvador's economy will get better because we will be buying and selling amongst ourselves. It's super, boost up our local economy. So let me catch up on the messages. Okay, I love my local farmers market. Yeah, I do too. Okay. Hi, Fab. Jocote and Anona. Is that no or no? You don't like jocotes or Anona? I like Anona. I think Anona is really cool. It kind of freaks me out how it bust open, because I'm like, how sanitary is that? But I usually carve off the outside, that Anona part. And no, I love Anona. Have you ever tried it in a smoothie? Anona is this really weird looking, I guess on the outside it looks like a pale green pineapple ball. But on the inside, when it grows to big size, it will actually kind of crack because it gets so big, and it's pink on the inside. There's lots of fruit that is in El Salvador that you will not find anywhere else. And you can't get it in the States because it doesn't have the shelf life. You get it off the tree and it's good maybe 3-4 days. So you can't really ship it very far. I've been thinking about maybe one of my relocation tours doing a gastronomy, a fruit and veggie kind of tour of going around the country and trying the indigenous fruits and vegetables from El Salvador, because it's a totally different experience. Let's see. Have you been in Usulatan? Yes, Jonathan, through Usulatan. It's really pretty. It's really pretty, and there's lots of farms in Usulatan too. Let's see. Orchata says, I take them to Whataburger in Texas. Who are you taking to Whataburger in Texas? Yeah, I can't. It's weird. When I come back to the States, I can't do fast food. I just can't. I'm sorry. When you're down there and you're eating fresh fruits and vegetables and rice and beans and fresh fish from the coast, that's fish that's only been dead maybe a couple days, and then come back here and it's like, oh, let's go to Whataburger, and you get this soup, this big old fry that's fried in all this oil, and I get a big old burger and the milkshake. Oh my goodness, I used to love milkshakes in the U.S. I can't do them anymore. I can't. I love my frozens and my licuados. That's what they call smoothies and milkshakes down there. They call them licuados. Licuado is like a fruit drink. Doesn't have the ice. If there's ice, then it's a frozen smoothie. But they'll do licuados with, which is just fruit and like water, and they usually put sugar in it, but I always make sure I tell them no extra sugar, please. You know, hold on the diabetes, please. So, but you can have them instead. They'll put the fruit and they'll put milk in it, and then there's your milkshake. So yeah, I come back here. If I go out to a fast food restaurant, I eat some fast food, and afterwards, it just sits. It sits for like 24 hours like a rock in my stomach, and I'm just like, oh, I don't want to eat anything. No, thank you. It's, yeah, nah, just, I can't do it. Can't do it. Anyway, so let's see. Hi, Elizabeth. Look at that look at that piece of cake. It looks exactly like Don Keatic. I don't know who Don Keatic is, but okay. Hello, Alvaro. Let's see what it's. Hey, Jenny, I tried to DM you on Instagram, but it said you only accept DMs from specific accounts. Should I? Yeah, DM me here on TikTok, Danielle. DM me here on TikTok. Elizabeth, no speak English. I'm sorry, Elizabeth. Living like a this channel is an English channel. You can find me on TikTok. In TikTok, I'm in Spanish, and I will be doing a live in TikTok in about an hour. So if you wanna quiere hablar español conmigo, vaya a TikTok y vamos a hablar. ¿Está bien? Okay. Walter. Hello, Walter. Beautiful. God bless you. Thanks, Hector. Thanks, Luke. Okay. So anyway, back to food sovereignty in El Salvador. Okay, so what is happening is lots of people are planting and lots of people are producing because that's the opportunity to go and make some money off of something that's super easy, and that's just planting. And so, mi español está en TikTok. En TikTok, yo hablo en español, but this channel is for English. And for people that are thinking of going to El Salvador and what's up in El Salvador. Hector, I lived, my farm was in between San Salvador and the beach. But recently I've moved from my farm and I moved into town. So now I live in San Sal. So anyway, so what's happening with the Agro Marcados? They're going in, people are buying local, it's boosting the local economy. And it's great because everybody's eating even healthier, and yeah, it's awesome. And it's really hard to complain and be a gorgujo, as they call it down there. Or it's the Salvadoran word for a whiner, like somebody who's always complaining and whining. So it's hard to be a gorgujo when your belly is full. You know, when your belly is full, it's safe to go outside. You have the freedom to produce, to create, to follow where, you know, your spirit is guiding you to live your best life. It's just, it's awesome. It's awesome. I am from El Salvador and I live in New York. Hi, Hector. Yeah, there's lots of Salvadoreños in New York. Almost as many as like DC area. I think the DMV area is like the second highest, and then LA is like the biggest for Salvadoreños. But anyway, so I am doing this next tour, starting October 14th, and there are even more projects going up for organic farms around the country. And that tour, we are going to go hit different sustainable living permaculture projects. We're going to hit bioconstruction projects. We're going to hit aquaponics. My co-tour guide that's coming with me, his name is Juan Rodriguez, and he worked in an eco-village in Ecuador, and now he's working on various projects around El Salvador, and he's got one of the first aquaponics projects in El Salvador, where I don't know if you've seen some of these. It's called a carton farm. It's like, you know, those big semi trucks. What's it called? Carton. I want to say carton, but what is it in English? Crater? Not Refrigerator. What is it? What's the back of this semi-truck called? But anyway, so they're doing these vertical farms inside the backs of semi-trucks where they're planting, they pump water through, and it's an aquaponics project, and they grow leafy greens all throughout there. So it's like your farm in a box. It's not a camper. It's the big metal boxes, rectangular boxes that are on the back of semi-trucks. So, anyway, but he's starting a project there, and we're going to go to Murph's Life. I don't know if you've seen Murph's Life. He's a big charitable YouTuber, and he's starting an organic farm with a boutique hotel, which is another growing segment of El Salvador, which is agro-tourism. So we're going to do some agro-tourism of visiting these different sites, and there's a bunch of bioconstruction sites where they're building with bamboo to make sustainable, housing and things like that. We're going to visit some of those. And the best of all is at the very end of our tour, we're going to go hit, and if you're in El Salvador now and you're interested in just that, and organic, and living more sustainably, living more, producing what you eat, there's a conference called a Jornada Internacional Soberanía Alimentaria. Wait, alimentaria. I put the accent on the wrong part. Alimentaria. That's it. Alimentaria. Okay? Or now it's a conference on food sovereignty. And they're having experts from all over Latam. People from Ecuador, Brazil, Cuba, Mexico, Guatemala, people that have different of these food sovereignty projects going on in their home countries, and they're going to come and they're going to present the research and their projects. And we're going to go to that conference. The conference is included in the tour. And we're going to go to that conference, and Juan and I, it's an English-speaking tour, so Juan and I will translate if you need help understanding some of the things they're talking about. And we're going to, visit like even some of these projects that are in the city. There's one called Divina Providencia that are a bunch of nuns. It's a convent that they are producing their own food and stuff, and then they sell their surplus in the community. And we're going to go visit them and see what they're creating, because that's the greatest thing. The best way to be productive, the best way to have the most freedom y libertad is from taking more responsibility for your own life. Taking more responsibility for your own finances, like with Bitcoin, more responsibility over your own food and your own health. Because when you're eating healthier food, that helps massively with your mental health. Like I said earlier, man, I go to fast food now. Ooh, I feel bad for like 24 hours. Like the grease, it's like a pit, just sits in my stomach. And that affects my mental health. I don't want to do anything because I feel like crap. But when I'm in El Salvador, I'm skinnier, I'm healthier because I'm eating whole foods, and I'm more activated to live more, to take more risks, to go create, to volunteer and serve. And it's just one trickles down to the next. Or Chata, you follow Murph's Life? Yeah, Aaron's great. Aaron's great. I don't know if you've seen his farm, but we're going to go visit his farm that he's creating out in, he's kind of by Naranjos. But we're actually going to stay entre Nubes or Jardín Celeste. That's where we're going to stay on our trip. We're going to stay in Jardín Celeste in Apaneca, and we're going to go visit a few of these farms out in the western part of El Salvador. Contenedor. Oh, that's what it's called. It's container. Thank you, Melvin. Thank you. Okay. So they have these container farms, right, that are kind of popping up around and about in a lot of different places where they have these UV lights inside, and it's like an aquaponics farm, but it's vertical farming. And so on part of our tour is we're going to go and Juan's going to show us some of his vertical farming projects, which is awesome because if you're like me and I don't have a yard anymore, because I had to move into an apartment when I moved into the city. But I have this tiny little triangular patio, and I am totally, totally taking up my wall space with some of this vertical farming and putting my tubes up on the wall where I can create my own leafy greens and produce my own stuff. Let's see. Let me catch up on the comments. Let's see. Jonathan says everything is expensive in El Salvador. Food is not expensive, Jonathan. You can get a good, like if you're talking Roma tomatoes, you can get like 20, 25 tomatoes for $1. That ain't expensive, honey. Like basic core ingredient foods, if you're trying to get processed foods, yeah, it's pricey. That's for sure. But if you're going to get basic ingredients, no. El Salvador has really great prices when it comes to basic ingredients. And these new farmers markets that the president has started up all over, where you produce local, you can come in, exchange, and people go in. Oh, and here's what the Agro Mercado experience, the farmers market experience, is a little different from the U.S. So what they have is they have like this little pavilion with a, yeah, it's just like a pavilion, I guess you'd say. And so they have a pavilion, they have a bunch of chairs sitting outside. So when you come in, you sit in a chair, and you wait your turn. And when it's your turn, you go in, and somebody's beside you, and they go around and they assist you in picking out, oh, okay, you want to pick out this, you want to pick out that. In order to, I guess, it's someone kind of walks you through in order to kind of keep order and also make sure you don't steal. Just saying. And okay, you want this many tomatoes, you want this many, cucumbers. You got like 4 cucumbers for $1. So I'm sorry, Jonathan, I beg to differ, but basic ingredients are not expensive in El Salvador. Rent is crazy expensive, but